Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my December 2019 reading wrap-up. Happy New Year! If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. This month I co-hosted the 4th round of the Queer Lit Readathon as well as participated in the Reindeer Readathon. Both of those TBRs overlapped quite significantly because I'm smart like that. I'm going to start with the nerdy, hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. In December, I read 20 books for a total of 5,401 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 1,535 of those pages were actually about 44 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 11 adult books, 8 YA books, and 1 middle grade book. I read 15 novels, 2 novellas, 2 graphic novels, and 1 essay. This month I read mostly contemporary and fantasy with some non-fiction, historical fiction, speculative fiction, and a thriller thrown in. If you adjust by page count, you can see it was a longer thriller and a shorter historical fiction. Most of these books, no surprise, came from the library, but this was the most colorful this graph has ever been in terms of books coming from other sources. I read 6 audiobooks, 6 paperback books, 3 hardcovers, and 5 Eve books. Most of my books were in the 300 to 399 pages range, and most of them were published in the last decade. And I know this is going to get old soon, but it's interesting that I can talk about 2019 being in the last decade. Most of these books were by female authors, although it was a very good month for reading non-binary authors, and most of the protagonists were female, with some ensemble narratives backing that up. In terms of setting, most of these books took place in the United States and other worlds, but I had some reads from Greece, Japan, and the United Kingdom. In terms of diversity, the biggest piece of the pie didn't have any to speak of. Others had intersectionalities, as well as queer rep, books involving race, and disability. In terms of star ratings, this month I had 1 2.5 star book, 2 3-star books, 5 3.5 star books, 7 4-star books, 3 4.5 star books, and 2 5-star books. Let's start with the lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? My 2.5 star read for the month was Semi-Charmed Life. This is a book about a girl who's going into her last year of university. She's either studying journalism or creative writing or something like that, and she happens to be living in the same dorm building as this socialite who's now attending the same university, and she falls into this position where she's now writing this socialite's blog. And this was just kind of meh, as you can guess from the 2.5 rating. There were a couple of vaguely magical elements to this book, but they really just played off as nonsensical. For example, the socialite moved into the same dorm building, but for some reason her room was way bigger than the other rooms. Like, hallways upon hallways the main character kept getting lost in to get to different locations. It just didn't make any sense whatsoever. Additionally, the characters were judgmental and fat-phobic, and I'm just really not here for that. I feel the need to point out that this book was published in the beginning of the decade, and that type of mentality in writing was more prevalent, but still, I'm here to call out the fat phobia because I don't like it. On to my 3-star reads, the first one being an essay I read by Audre Lorde. It was called Trip to Russia, and it was from the collection Sister Outsider. This was something I picked up for the Queer Lit Readathon that fulfilled at least a couple of the prompts. I meant to read the whole collection but could only get my hands on a PDF of just one of them, so I read that. Considering I used this to fulfill a prompt for the Queer Lit Readathon, this wouldn't be the essay that I would pick if I could choose any of her essays to read, because although it had a little bit of queer content in it, it was mostly about her trip to Russia in the 1980s as part of this writing festival type of thing, and mostly what I got out of it was her describing these different places in Moscow and me being like, I've been there. I do need to get around to actually reading more of Audre Lorde's work, as this was the first thing I've ever read by her, but that's for future Kathy to worry about. My other 3-star read was Sweet Blue Flowers Volume 1. This is a slice of life manga. It's about these girls going to school together. There are crushes here, there, and everywhere because it's high school. And the biggest problem I had with this was I'm not very good at distinguishing between characters in a comic book like this when it's black and white, because the character pages at the beginning are all done in color, and if I could just be like, oh, that character with the blue hair is this character, it would be very, very easy. But when you're flipping through, it's all in black and white, so you can't take those cues. You have to take cues like this person wears a tie or that type of thing, because a lot of the faces are very similar. That being said, this was fun and cute, but ultimately a little bit forgettable. On to my 3.5 star reads, the first one being The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. This is a novella that happens between the first book and the second book in her Montague siblings series. So slight spoilers ahead here if you haven't read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This book is about the fact that Monty and Percy haven't gotten it on yet and would like to make that happen, and of course that's what happens. It is a novella, so it's not like we need a very long drawn out plot for this. There is some plot to it though, and there's some vulnerability and that type of thing, so I enjoyed it from that standpoint. It did seem very much like reading fan fiction of these characters, which is weird because it's the same author, so she can't write fan fiction of her own characters. But if she could, this is what that was, and it was pretty cute. Next we have The Deep by River Solomon. This is about a community of people who live under the ocean and are the descendants of people who were thrown off slaving ships because they were pregnant and sickly, and then those women died but birthed these babies that are basically mermaids, although that word is never used. There is a different word in the text, I just for the life of me can't remember what it was. Our main character has a very important task because she is our historian in this pod and basically has to keep the memories of everything this civilization has gone through, and once a year shares it with everybody, but everybody else is free to completely forget it throughout the rest of the year, and the main character is having a hard time with that. On to another book that definitely has scenes under the sea, and that's Our Bloody Pearl. This book is about a siren who is captured by pirates. Usually this shouldn't be able to be a thing because sirens can sing and then that stops the pirates from capturing them, but this pirate has created something that nullifies that singing technique. So this siren has been captured on this pirate ship for quite some time, and then all of a sudden that pirate ship is under attack by a different pirate ship, and this new person might be able to help this siren. This book has queer rep, this book has disability rep. It's all about learning how to trust people again because there's definitely mental health rep in here, and there were a lot of epic battles. I would definitely pick up the next in the series, although I think we know how good I am at actually completing series, so we'll see when that happens. Next we have Timekeeper, another start to another series. This is a book that takes place in 1875 in London, and it's kind of an alternate reality. It's kind of a steampunk type of London. And there are these people called timekeepers. They do all the upkeep on the clocks throughout the land, and basically if the clock isn't running properly, then time gets weird. Our main character is the youngest timekeeper in recorded history, and his dad is also a timekeeper, but his dad is trapped in a village where time has stopped. He also recently was in an accident while he was fixing a clock, so he's got a little bit of PTSD there. And he's just about to go on his first assignment since coming back to work, and maybe he meets a cute boy, maybe things happen. You'll have to read the book to find out. Again, I found this one imaginative and interesting, and I would like to pick up the second in the series someday, because again, when's that gonna happen? Who knows? Next we have Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. This is about a set of 5 cousins as well as their mothers as well as their grandmothers. They all live on this same land and they have this ability to create flowers when they touch the earth. Unfortunately, they are also cursed because if they fall in love, that person dies. This could be potentially disastrous because when we start this book, all 5 of the cousins are in love with the same girl. One day they sacrifice some of their favorite things to the land, and the next day a boy pops out of it and they don't know where he came from. This is magical realism. It's beautifully written. Unfortunately, I found out throughout 2019 that magical realism, although enjoyable, is just not my thing. I like it well enough, but I think the aspects of it that people who really love this book and rate it 5 stars really enjoy, I just kind of don't really care for. I don't hate them by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm kind of ambivalent. So I enjoy my time with these types of stories, but they're never really my favorite. On my 4-star reads, the first one being Maneaters Volume 3. This is a graphic novel series that has to do with this alternate reality where toxoplasmosis has morphed, and since most of the population is infected with toxoplasmosis because of cats, if women get their periods, they become man-eating cats. If that's not enough to make you want to pick up the series, you will not pick up this series, and that's completely fine. This being the 3rd in the series, I can't talk too much about the plot, but what I can say is it seemed like this could have been an ending point, and I haven't checked to see if there's going to be future volumes. I would be interested if there were. But this volume definitely ramped up and had some plot that I did not see coming. Next, to continue my unintended theme of mermaid books, I read Rolling in the Deep, which is the prequel to Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This takes place 7 years before Into the Drowning Deep, and has to do with the first expedition that went off to find mermaids in Mariana's Trench. If you are familiar with Into the Drowning Deep, you will know exactly how this book ends. I was familiar with it. I read it last month, but knowing exactly how it was going to end did not diminish my enjoyment of this book. I still got to know these characters, I cared about these characters, and then what we know is going to happen happened. So if you've read and enjoyed Into the Drowning Deep and you haven't read this prequel, I would give it a shot. Next we have Orpheus Girl, which is a loose retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, except for it's set in Texas and the people meant to be Orpheus and Eurydice are both women. Definite trigger warnings going into this one, as the relationship between these two girls is found out and then they are both sent to conversion therapy. I tore through this in a single day, so if this subject matter is something that you're going to be able to read without hurting yourself, give it a go. I found it a very powerful read because I've never been anywhere close to being sent to something like this, but I know that it happens. It definitely used to happen a lot more than it currently does, but it still happens. Next I read another book with a lot of trigger warnings, and that is The Rules Do Not Apply by Ariel Levy. Ariel Levy is a journalist, and at one point in her life she had a wife, and she had a house, and she had a child, and then the next month she had none of those things. I have a feeling that this memoir was a way that she got over some of the things that have been happening in her life. I did find a lot of it very, very interesting, but then I feel weird enjoying something that has so much dark content, except for that person put it out in the world as potentially part of her healing process. So it's that mixed feeling of I enjoyed consuming this but would never wish it on anyone. It's kind of the same feeling you get when you really, really like a dark, twisted thriller, except for this was real life. On to something happier. This month, the middle grade I read was George by Alex Gino. This is about George, who knows that she is a girl. Nobody else seems to know this yet. To be fair, she hasn't actually told anybody yet, but she does want to audition for Charlotte in Charlotte's Web so she can show everybody that she is a girl. This book is well beloved, and I can absolutely see why. George is such a wonderful, soft, beautiful character, and the way that this book was written was just very engaging. It also made me want to reread Charlotte's Web, that's for sure. And over the last month or so, I've found myself remembering side characters from this book and just enjoying the fact that they existed. On to something else a little bit fun, we have Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This is about a woman who has moved to a small town to take care of her older sister who has recently been in a car crash and basically needs help getting around and needs help with her daughter. Her daughter wants to be a part of this annual Renaissance Fair, and as we soon find out, if a kid is in the Renaissance Fair, they have to have a guardian be there with them. Obviously it can't be her mom, so it ends up being our protagonist, her aunt. And while she's there, she doesn't really get on with the guy that leads the Renaissance Fair. However, their characters in the Renaissance Fair get on very, very well. This is a cute contemporary, and as it goes on you can see how these characters might fit together and how they might be able to heal each other's broken spots just a little bit, which is what you want out of a relationship in a book, really. My final 4-star book was Full Disclosure. This is about a girl named Simone who has HIV and doesn't want to tell anybody at her new school because she left her old school because she told somebody and then that person told everyone. She's not ashamed of her status, but people tend to be ignorant about HIV and how it's a very manageable condition, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with her. And because of that ignorance, parents from that school didn't want her at the school anymore, so now she's changed schools. She does end up making a couple of really great friends at her new school, and there's this boy that she really has a crush on. However, she gets a note in her locker one day saying that if she doesn't back off from hanging out with him, somebody is going to disclose that she has a positive status. She's also the student director for a production of Rent, which I really enjoyed, even though it's an aspect that's a little bit on the nose. But I felt it worked out just fine. If you don't really know anything about HIV or AIDS, I highly suggest you read this book immediately because it will give you some foundational knowledge that you likely do not have. This book is also full of queer characters of all different types, and obviously I'm here for that. One of my 4.5-star reads, the first one being Birthday by Meredith Russo. This is about two people who were born on the same day during a weird snowstorm in the middle of September, and they celebrate their birthdays together every year. However, every year since they turned 12, Morgan has been trying to tell Eric that she is a girl, and it hasn't gone well. Morgan used to be really into soccer because her dad is a soccer coach. However, her mom recently died and she's still trying to get over that. And the interesting thing about this book is we only see these characters one day out of the year. We just see them on their 12th birthday, their 13th birthday, so on up until their 18th birthday. This was really a testament to how much and how little can happen in a year. For example, you might think a year is plenty of time to come up with a way to let people in your life know that you are not what they think you are. A year is also plenty of time to beat yourself up about the conflict you are feeling and to hide away from the people you love. I really love this format and the evolution of this friendship, and I think it's a very important book. Next, I finished a series, which is easy to do when it's a duology, and I read Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Again, being the second in the series, I can't really talk too much about the plot of this one because I never want to spoil anybody in these wrap-ups. That's what a review is for. But I can say I continue to care very hard about these characters and what was happening to them. In this book, the stakes also kept getting higher and higher and higher, and I kept thinking that they would be okay, and then suddenly they weren't, so it was very action-packed. This was exactly the heist found family story that everybody has told me it was, and I enjoyed it a lot. Next we have Black Iris. The protagonist of this book tells you straight out that they are an unreliable narrator and they're a writer, and they can't really be redeemed by the end of the book, which is an interesting way to start out. Why are there drunken asshats outside my house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? The timeline of this book also jumps back and forth between a few different months in the last year of high school and the first year of college. And very vital information is given out so slowly that it's really hard to even talk about how this starts. However, there are a ton of trigger warnings for this book, including sexual assault and suicide, so be cautious going into it. But it was a hell of a ride and I highly enjoyed it. We're now on to my 5-star books, and I only have 2, so my penultimate book of this list is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. This is not quite an autobiography because it's not really about him. It's about his time being a lawyer and trying to get people off death row and trying to get people who have been wrongly convicted out of prison. It also recently has been adapted into a movie, which I saw the trailer for the movie first and then heard Jesse from Bowties and Books talk about this book and went, oh, I need to read the book before seeing the movie, because I'm that person, but also because I was supremely interested in it. The cases that Bryan chose to talk about in this book are absolutely heartbreaking. Often it comes down to people who just did not have the resources to have anybody on their side, and in many cases this was because of their class or their ethnicity or their mental status. Sometimes it was right down to people being incredibly racist and just wanting to put somebody in jail because of their skin color. I knew going into this book that the population of prisons in the United States is heavily skewed to people of color and people with disabilities, but this book takes those statistics and puts faces to them. There was one point where I sent Jesse a message saying that I was very glad that I had been listening to the book in the rain because I was just full on crying on my way to work one day because of this book. It's highly impactful, it's very, very well written, and I think that you should read it and also go see the movie whenever it comes out. That means we are down to my last book of this list and my favorite book of this month, and that was I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. This is a thriller mystery that I had never heard of before. I'd seen the book in the library, but I'd never thought to pick it up and see what the synopsis is. And we get this story from 2 points of view. When we start out, this young single mother has just picked her son up from school and they're on the walk home, and unfortunately he is struck and killed by a car. Going forward, we have the perspective of the detective on the case and we have the perspective of a mother. I very much enjoyed this because we had this detective trying to solve this case but not having any leads, and then what was happening in his life story, as well as this mother who is just grieving and feels like she is responsible for the death of her own child. There are also so many aspects of this story that I can't get into because they are major spoilers for something that is a very big twist about halfway through. But if you've read this book, please talk to me about it because I did not see that coming and very much enjoyed it. If you want to hear me talk more about these books or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always listed down below. I've now been doing them for 3 years, which I'm pretty proud of. If you've read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!